are on our second lesson. And before I begin, I just want to say thank you to those who liked and followed our page. And I hope that you keep on sharing the page and also the contents so that many people will be taking advantage of this, and especially those who are law students or taking their bar review for the moment. Now, I just want to tell you in advance that this lesson is composed of three parts. So, the first part is on the law and the kasambahay, and second would be the engagement and termination of the kasambahay, and third would be on the prohibitions on the salient points of the law. I'm doing this presentation to organize and be more concise, because if you look at the law, it's differently written as compared to my presentation now. But I hope you appreciate this order and you will learn so much from this. Okay, we begin now. The Batas Kasambahay is numbered as Republic Act number 10361. And this law is known as the Domestic Workers Act. And to make it short, it's called as Batas Kasambahay. It is a consolidation of two bills, the Senate Bill 78 and House Bill number 6144. I purposely presented or wrote that in the presentation so that in case of conflict or interpretation of the law, we go back, as we know in the rules in statutory construction, we go back to the extrinsic aids in case of interpretation of the law. So this is, I think, advantageous if you know the Senate bill number and the House bill number. Now, it was approved sometime in January 18, 2013. It is comparably recent as to other social legislations. And you have to take note that this law is applicable both in criminal law and social legislation, and also in human rights law. So it covers the three areas of law, and I hope you learn from this. And if you are an employer of a kasambahay, then it will be very helpful to you. Okay. The reasons behind the law, if you look at this section 2 thereof, it says these following principles, in which the Philippines affirms that labor is a primary social force, and we adhere to the internationally accepted working conditions for workers, and the state recognizes the need to protect the rights of domestic workers. And also, there's a need to promote gender-sensitive measures, in which, as a policy of the state, if you've heard GAD or gender and development, that's a policy now of the state, such that men and women are equal in social legislation and equal in the eyes of the law. Now, who is a kasambahay? A kasambahay, although we commonly hear this, especially in the Philippines, because this is a common setup, the law provides the definition of a kasambahay. It says that any person, as you can read in the screen, engaged in domestic work within an employment relationship. And they could be the general house help, your yaya or the nursemaid, the cook or the gardener, or the laundry person. However, you have to take note of the exclusion of the law. It says that it excludes any person who performs domestic work occasionally or sporadically, and the second element, it says there, not on an occupational basis. If these two elements are present, then that cannot be covered by our Batas Kasambahay. Now, what are the rights and privileges of a kasambahay? The kasambahay should not be subjected to any kind of abuse or any form of physical violence or harassment or any act tending to degrade the dignity of the person. And the person should also be given the basic necessities, including at least 3 meals, and the law says adequate meals. It should not be something that would cause malnourishment on the person. And also another area that must, or another thing that must be provided, is the humane sleeping arrangement that would ensure the safety of the person. Now, the kasambahay should aside from the protection from physical abuse, aside from the meals, he should also be given rest and assistance in case of illness. And he should also be protected from the tendency to withdraw or suspend the basic necessities as a form of punishment. This form of punishment is not allowed under the law. And he should also be given the right to privacy at all times. The law does not make a qualification, so you have to remember this very important right or privilege of the Kasambahay. And if you have to, sorry, that's my dog if you hear that, it also extends to all forms of communication and personal effects. And another right of the Kasambahay is he should also be given access to outside communication during free time. And even if he's working, in case of an emergency, he should also be allowed to have outside access to outside communication. Now, another right or privilege of the Kasambahay is he or she should be afforded the opportunity to finish basic education and allowed access to even alternative learning systems. And you will know later which agency of the government responsible to facilitate this right. Now, you have to know that this is a contractual relation of the parties, and we have two parties, the Kasambahay and the employer. Now, on the part of the Kasambahay, he is obliged to render satisfactory service at all times. This is an expectation that must be met. And of course, no one will be hiring a Kasambahay who is dysfunctional and not doing his work. Now, another very important obligation of the Kasambahay is he is not supposed to publicly disclose any communication pertaining to the family of the employer or members of the household. And you have to take note as to the period of the prohibition. It says during and after employment. So this obligation is applicable during and after employment. And there's no period at all. So even if he is disconnected or terminated from the service, he is not supposed to disclose such communication. However, later you will find out that there's an exception to this. And on the part of the employer has said a while ago that the Kasambahay should be afforded the access to finish basic education or even alternative learning system. Then the employer, as part of as a counterpart, should adjust to the work schedule of the Kasambahay so that this right or privilege of the Kasambahay to finish his education is not rendered useless. Now, what as I said a while ago that this is a contractual relationship, so it needs an employment contract. Now, the employment contract must be executed before the commencement of the service, so before the Kasambahay starts to work. And it should be, the law requires, it should be in the language or dialect understood by the parties. Now, you have to take note that most likely the Kasambahay is underprivileged or coming from the even the below poverty line of the strata. Now, this person does not know English. So if you're a lawyer or soon you will become lawyers, you have to take note that you have to as part of this obligation under the law, it should be in the language or dialect understood by both parties. So if that Kasambahay does not know English, you should provide a translation. I would advise that there's immediately after the English provisions of the contract, immediately after there should be the local language understood by the Kasambahay, or else in case of conflict or there's a case against the employer or the Kasambahay, then you go back to the provisions of the contract, then that would not be a problem for the resolution of the case. So you're helping the parties to facilitate the resolution of their case. Now, the Kasambahay being a party to the contract, he should be given a copy of the contract, of course, so that in case he complains against the employer when he or she goes to Dole, the the agency assigned or has jurisdiction on conflicts between the employer and the kasambahay, then that contract would be of help in the resolution of the case. Now, it must contain the contract. I'm referring to the employment contract. It must contain the required terms. Actually, the law requires the following terms that must be found in the contract. First, the duties and responsibilities of the kasambahay. Of course, these must be clear cut from the beginning. And the period of employment, because if the period of employment and even that could be considered as a debt bondage, and later in our second part, I will, or no, in the third part, you will find out what is debt bondage, and you should provide also the compensation. Later in the upcoming parts of the lessons, you will know what is the prescribed minimum monthly wage of the kasambahay, and also the authorized deductions and the proportionate additional payment in case that person or the kasambahay will be assigned to the usual household work, and also the rest days and allowable leaves. Aside from that, you should also, as the employer must provide the board and lodging and medical attention, and in case of the deployment expenses, and if there's a loan agreement, because that's not absolutely prohibited under the law, then that should be also provided so that the kasambahay will know when the loan will be paid off and how much is the amortization per month if they agree so. And also the termination of employment and other lawful conditions agreed upon by the parties. So long as it is lawful, then it is allowed. Now we just ended our first part, and I hope you look forward to our second part. Thank you for listening and have a good night. Bye bye for now, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye.